What's up, guys? Coach Jake coming to you from down home. We're on lockdown, we're on shutdown, and a lot of us are still trying to maintain that muscle mass and maybe even grow more muscle in this time where we're all on that lockdown. So in order to maintain and or grow muscle mass, we need 1, 2, or 3 of a triad of things. We need mechanical tension, we need metabolic stress, or we need some kind of muscle damage. So the tension part, it's kind of out the window if we don't have a lot of load, so a lot of heavy weight to go with. But we can get the other two, muscle damage and metabolic stress, quite easily with just at-home everyday objects. So I've got outlaid here. We're kind of focusing on legs today. We've got knee dominant, which is going to be a lot more kind of quad intensive, and we've got a lot more hip dominant, which is going to be hamstring and glute. So these are some of the probably most common, most popular movements. We're just going to run through each of them just to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of how to execute them. So we'll start with the knee dominant. We've got a regular old squat. So we've got your standard air squat, feet shoulder width, maybe a little bit wider. Good quality movement there. Torso's rigid. We're trying to make sure our knees stay in line with our big toes so they kind of face that way. Making sure we get proper depth. If we don't get proper depth, then we're going to create some imbalances in those muscles. So that's a standard air squat. We can go with a goblet squat or some kind of loaded squat, whether we hold it out here or close to the body. Okay, again, just something that we can incorporate a little bit of load. So that's your standard squat. Next up, we have a lunge. A lot of iterations of a lunge. You got your standard stationary lunge moving forward. We can also do that same variant with a back step. Very similar, they're just going to target slightly different muscles in different proportions. We've got a rear foot elevated split squat. This is a great single leg exercise. This is going to create a lot of muscle damage potentially if we do a lot of volume, and it can actually, if we do enough of them, create a lot of metabolic stress as well. So we can load this if we need to. I'm going to go ahead and do some unloaded ones just to kind of show you the standard procedure. So rear foot elevated. This might be a couch, it might be a chair, it might be a box, whatever you've got a hand on that has some stability to it. We're going to hop this front leg out far enough to when I descend, my knee stays over my ankle. I like this back knee to touch. Stand up nice and tall. So this is a single leg, rear foot elevated split squat. Again, putting a lot of stress on the quadriceps. It's also going to get a lot of glute action if we do enough volume with that. Lastly, we have a Cossack squat. So a Cossack squat is a super wide stance. It's very similar to the rear foot elevated, but now we've got some lateral movement going. So you're going to get a lot more of that interior and exterior hip as well. For this move, we want to make sure that you feel comfortable getting down into that position. So if your mobility is a little bit lacking, it may not be the best option at this time. But same deal, we're trying to find good quality range of motion through that move. All right, moving on from the knee dominant, we've got the hip dominant, our deadlift variations, and then some kettlebell swings, which is a great dynamic effort, which is really going to target the glutes, but also incorporate some metabolic demand as well. So we got our conventional deadlift. Again, you generally need some sort of weight to execute this move. So if you've got some kettlebells or even some dumbbells on hand, your conventional stance, hips are going to be a little closer than your squat stance. Nice rigid torso, hips go back. Pick up that weight nice and tall at the top. Okay? Again, enough volume of that is going to start to develop some of that posterior chain to the hamstrings. When we talk about muscle damage, the eccentric portion, that's the portion where the muscles are actually elongating. That's the descent, this portion of the deadlift, or the descending portion of the squat. That's where the majority of the muscle damage can occur. So if you focus on that, slow it down, and you allow that portion of the movement to be slow and methodical, you'll create more muscle damage, which is great to boost testosterone for muscle growth and or maintenance, but it's also going to be the thing that's going to make maybe tomorrow not so great. So be cautious of that. If you're new to this game, you don't want to go overboard on the eccentric. So don't slow it down too much and don't do too much volume, or you will regret it the next day. So moving on from the conventional deadlift, we have the sumo deadlift with the same thing. we just have a really wide stance. It's going to target a little bit more of that interior thigh, but it looks pretty much the same. You're trying to keep your torso a little bit taller through that movement. So that's your sumo deadlift. You've got your Romanian style deadlift, which is just a conventional deadlift, but we don't bend the knees very much at all. So they stay kind of soft. You might hear it referred to as more of a straight leg deadlift, which is a misnomer because your legs are never locked out straight. They're always slightly bent, but they just don't bend as much. So that's actually going to put more target towards your hamstrings, less target towards your quads and your glutes. And then finally, we've got this single leg deadlift, which is a great variant because it's going to really target, again, the stability through the hip. So this is a great preventative prehab type of exercise to make sure that you have good, strong, sound hips. Might be good to relieve back pain, things like that. So if I were to do a couple of reps unloaded, it would simply look like this. It looks exactly like a Romanian deadlift. It's just done off of one leg. If I was to do that loaded, looks the same, just like that. So balance is a key factor in this. If your balance isn't so good and you're falling all over the place, you're not really targeting those muscles because you're kind of putting them on, they're getting relaxed when you start to curve your back, fall over. So if you need a little bit of stability, nothing wrong with kind of putting a hand on a wall, a hand on a door jamb, whatever you need to do to maintain that balance, because really we're just looking for the movement itself. And then of course, to finish it up, might be a good option just to get a finisher each day with a fair amount of kettlebell swings. Again, some dynamic ballistic action to fire those glutes, again, creating more metabolic stress. So it just looks like that. If you think about the bell just being an extension of your arms are just along for the ride, the bell is just along for the ride, your hips are generating that force. It's almost like you're just getting ready to jump, and then you jump without leaving the ground. That propels the bell up. That's a standard kettlebell swing. So again, maybe you finish each day with something like that. So not that you're going to do all of that in one day, but you might mix and match some of those components throughout the week. If you were to do just those movements in some form or variation, it's probably all you really need. And then once you get back access to your gym, you can start loading it, and then you can start adding in even more variety in terms of intensity, load, and whatnot. So I think that's probably good for a lesson for today. So I'll leave you with practice those moves. Make sure that your quality trumps quantity. So make sure they look good before you do too many. That's it.